is now obsessed with this subject. I'll just take it back. In 2003, I had produced some successful comedies, Road Trip, Old School, Starsky and Hutch, and felt completely lost. Living in Los Angeles, being trapped in the bubble, and those who live here know about this bubble. The same type of bubble that exists here exists in the entertainment business. And 4 years after living in Los Angeles, went down to Juvenile Hall in Silmar, California, and sat with, my first visit, I was a guest speaker in a creative writing program called Inside Out Writers. And I sat down with 10 kids, 14, 15, 16, who are all facing life in prison. And the kid sitting next to me, David Negretti, had just been sentenced to 300 years in prison at 15 years old. And talk about one hell of an experience. And hearing his story, in his crime, he stood next to the guy who shot the victim in the butt. The victim was in and out of the hospital in a day. And in California, you could say he's guilty of aiding and abetting an attempted murder with a gang enhancement, with gun enhancements, and it added up to 300 years. And he took to trial and he lost. And I could not understand how, in hearing the stories around the table, how you hear the stories of absent fathers, sexual and physical abuse, foster care, and you realize that every adult in these young people's lives had failed them leading up to this point. And now we're going to look at the worst thing they did and basically throw their lives away forever and make sure that one thing they did defines them for the rest of their life. And I wasn't somebody that could sit and see the hope in their eyes, know that they all could change their lives, and we know that all kids can change their lives and can change, and just let that happen. And then seeing the absolute inadequate lawyers they had while facing life sentences, and even while they're there, they're in a prison and they're invisible and no one's there anymore. I felt that I had to continue. So I started teaching that creative writing class and still do every Saturday morning. And as I went through the process of working with these young people, many of whom are here right today, I started seeing, first it was kids are coming home, what do we do in the community? So I got them a few boards so I could give people jobs when they got out, help them get on their feet, walk them onto college campuses. But then it became, well, they're being sent into a prison system with no hope, with no resources, with no programs. So we went in and grew college programs within the prison system, where today in California we have 8,000 inmates in full-time college. So we 100%, the main focus is stopping the cradle to prison pipeline. We hope they never get there. But I want to implore everyone that when they're there in these hopeless environments, where there aren't positive people in their lives, where the people they see every day are not showing them love, that we don't forget about them when they're there. And we realize that we will get as many people out and not have them see a prison ever, but the ones that are there, we can use that moment to give them the resources and the help and the love to send them in the right direction. And so I realized it took Governor Schwarzenegger cutting $300 million out of the budget about 5, 6 years ago, and the college programs were cut. And my insane life was, I'm in the middle of producing The Hangover at Warner Brothers, and one calls Steven Spielberg, and the next call is a collect call from an inmate whose entire identity has been shattered because they have gone from gang member to college student, and that was their path, and now everything was lost. And what crystallized to me was we took a lot of the men and women who had gotten out and had started college on the inside and were now in community colleges and four-year universities in the community. And we got them on, and once again, I was able to, with the kind of entertainment pedestal, able to get the president of the Senate on the phone and ask him if he would get on the phone with these young men and women and listen to their testimony about how much this program in prison helped. And in a 20-minute phone call with their testimony, $2 million was restored in the budget, and the college program was saved. And so that was the first moment where the light went off. And then we went up to Sacramento because there was a bill. We're the only country in the world other than Somalia that sentences kids to die in prison. The only country. And a bill in the California legislature had been stalled and had failed for 6 years in a row that was literally taking children that received life without parole and giving them a parole hearing after 25 years. That simple bill, no guarantee they're coming home, but just give them an opportunity to go to a parole board. And for 6 years in a row, some hardline Republicans and some chicken shit Democrats would not vote for the bill. And in one session, with these guys coming up to Sacramento and saying, here's who I was at 14 years old, here's what I did when I went to prison. Not what the system did, but here's the choices I made to change my life when I went to prison. And this is what I'm doing now. We had a doctor, a cardiologist, who was in prison. Firefighters, paramedics, architects, engineers. And in that one day up there, we got the final 2 votes and passed the bill. And the governor, and let me tell you, that time, 0 Republicans, we got 1 vote more than we needed, and the governor, who had 30 days to sign it on day 30. And it became the law for 360 kids who got life without parole. The next year, we said, well, what about the 6,500 other kids that got extreme sentences? So David Negretti, who got 300 years, was not going to benefit from SB 9 because he didn't get life without parole. And this time, we reframed it. We got Newt Gingrich to write letters of support. We got Grover Norquist to write letters of support. We got Rand Paul to write letters of support. And of course, every progressive organization on the planet. So we reframed the bill. This time, a bill to help 6,500 kids. We had these young men and women in the Capitol every week for 5 months, telling their stories and their testimonies. And I really feel we have a storytelling problem here, but I'll get to that in a second, as my background is in storytelling. But this bill passed with 9 votes more than we needed, with 10 Republicans, and the governor signed it on day 2. So the entire momentum in California began to shift because of reframing and personal testimony from success stories who were in the system, because these Republicans in California who have never voted to reduce sentencing in their lives did not know this. They just knew what they saw on TV. So David Negretti, with that 300-year sentence, I got to go into a prison, look at him face to face and say, you get to go to the parole board in 12 years. You're going home. And 6,500 people will also get that chance. And so I really believe, I mean, if we count the media impressions a day of Black and Hispanic men, how many do we think are going to be positive? When you watch the news and see what's going on and how they picture drug dealers or gang members, they're not telling the success stories on the news. They're telling about the murders on the news. They're scaring everybody. All the jurors that are sitting in the jury box on their lives are terrified because of what they see on the news. So the story of Big Nate Williams in the back, who did 31, raise your hand, Nate, who did 31 years in prison. 32, sorry, thank you. So 32 years in prison, came out with a BA degree and is now working on his MSW. That story is not told. The story of Alton Petrie right here, from the jailhouse to Morehouse, has not been told. Raise your hand, Alton. David Garnica, am I shortchanging you, 23 years? 23 years in prison and 6 AA degrees later, no one's made the movie about David Garnica's life. So I really, and raise your hand all the others who are in community college or university right now. So those stories are not, those are not the stories being told. The facts are not also being told. So Rand recently did a study that showed that correctional higher education programs for folks that are incarcerated and programs for them when they get out reduces recidivism by 50%. That's right. And for every $1 you spend on a correctional education program, you save $5 on reduced recidivism. and people are not coming back to the system.
That's right.
So even to fiscal conservatives, this should make sense. So the success stories plus the research should be able to get us some movement in this town, I hope. But what is the strategy? And this is why we are here, talking to folks on both sides of the aisle, trying to figure out how we can be helpful in the incredible work that you guys are doing with the Congressional Black Caucus. We hope that this is a relationship we hope this is only the beginning of the relationship. We are here to serve. We're so excited to be here. And please use us in whatever way we can do to help your mission. Thank you guys very, very much.